Before we start the podcast, I just want to talk to you guys about Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast, and let me explain why. First of all, it's free, so you can get it anywhere, anytime, costs no money. Second of all, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, whatever device you choose. As well as that, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. You can make money from your podcast too with no minimum listenership. That means a nobody podcast like mine can make money off of sponsorships. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So if you haven't tried Anchor or you want to start a podcast and haven't tried it yet, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM to get started.
You're listening to the Dillo's Dojo podcast, hosted by Dylan Dillo Smith, Midwestern Ontario one and only MMA podcast, where we interview MMA fighters and voice actors like Sergeant Frank Woods.
What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Dillo's Dojo podcast. Today we're going to be talking about a couple things. We've got some Dana White's Contender Series, the second last week of the summer's Dana White's Contender Series, and some darker news that I'm going to want to start with, just so it starts dark, but, we can kind of lift everything up going on from there on out. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the podcast. So I'm going to start off with some news that broke this week, specifically kind of close to the weekend leading up to this or yesterday's UFC event. So in about the past month or so, since 2018, there's been this, it hasn't really been in the mainstream news until very, very, very recently, as soon as probably like yesterday or Friday. But what I was going to get to, is so since 2018, the Iranian government have had this national champion wrestler named Navid Afkari captive. Not like they didn't kidnap him or anything. He's apparently arrested for a supposed murder he committed. But all signs are leading to the fact that he didn't commit it, and that his confession that he had released, I think earlier this month, was coerced, as is most of those confessions. I'm going to be real with you folks. But anyway, it kind of started to blow up earlier this week and, kind of last week because Dana White pleaded with the Iranian government to spare this man, which got Donald Trump and Secretary Pompeo in on this, pleading to the Iranian officials to let his people go. No, I'm kidding, but let Afkari go. And they pretty much just told the Americans, no, fuck you. Their response to the Americans was to make a video package brainwashing anyone who would watch it to believe that Afkari was the bad guy. As many experts have already stated, many political experts, many people in the political field have said, many audio experts, people who, investigators who watch these confession tapes and stuff, have also said that it is very, very, very similar to every other form of coerced confession that has come out of the Middle East. And so that's why a lot of people aren't believing the confession. And that's why the news has really started to blow up recently about it. Because since 2018, essentially, human rights groups have been kind of fighting for Afkari's release. And the Iranian government hasn't just had any of it. They just do not care for the life of them. So last week, we had Donald Trump and Pompeo beg the Iranian government for this person's life. And then this week, we got that video package that I'm going to explain to you guys now. It was essentially, they took footage of the murder victim's family crying and weeping, grieving, that general thing. And then I think took one of the victim's family members, and the family member went on about how, you know, um, they're grieving and how they're lost without this person in their life now. And then it goes on to another clip of Afkari just chilling on a motorcycle, being himself, but it's coupled with the audio of him confessing. It's coupled with the audio of him being coerced to confess to this murder that, like I said, many people, including myself, believe he did not commit. And this all happened like this guy, this murder victim could have been killed by just about anybody, because this happened during a protest, a civil unrest that was happening, protesting the Iranian government at the time. And a lot of calamity had happened. Like, many people were injured and or dead during the civil unrest. Like I said, it could have been anybody, but because they had surveillance footage of that person, of Kari, on the same road the murder happened, and it was the footage of him walking on the road on his phone. Just because they had that, they're pinning the murder on him. And well, to get to the darker part of this this talk and to put an end to it, I believe Friday or Saturday morning, our time, obviously not their time. Could have been like the afternoon for them, for all we fucking know. Could have been the night. But Saturday morning, around our time, I believe, we got the news that the Iranian government executed Afkari by hanging for his crimes. And so that kind of drew a lot of ire from the combat sports community and a lot of political people. And last night, Dana White was nice enough to not Dana White, the broadcast team obviously was nice enough to put a memorial to him at the beginning of the broadcast. So I just wanted to talk about that, to just kind of let people know kind of what's going on over there, and just to keep Afkari and his family in your thoughts, and because he was tortured into confessing. Insider details reported that he was being tortured practically every day to get a confession, and he finally confessed. And essentially, he was tortured to confess to a crime he didn't commit, because it would get the heat off him, only for that heat to cause his death. Right? So it's just kind of sad. But without further ado, let's get out of that, because now I'm sad. Now I'm just sad. So we'll get into Dana White's Contender series now, because that's mainly what this first half of the podcast is mostly to talk about. It's either that or UFC 4 stuff, because I love that game. Even though I had so much bad shit to say about it 2 weeks ago, I love that game. It's fun. It just needs a lot of fucking tune-ups. But anyway, so we're going to get into Dana White's Contender series. This week was the second last week of what Dana White does every summer, is the Contender series, and now he's planning one in November, I believe. So that's why I'm calling it the Summer Contender series. So this is the second last week, and I just got to say, 4 out of the 5 winners got contracts, and 4 out of the 5 winners finished their opponents. So going to be very fun to talk about this one. May not be a long one, because like I said, there won't be too much to explain for the fights, except for really the first fight of the night. But the rest of them were awesome. We have some very hard to pronounce names that I have to remember, and all I remember is the finishes and how cool they were, really. So we'll get into that. But let's just start with Sherrard Blackledge versus Cameron Church in the lightweight division. This was the only fight that went all 3 rounds. And I said this, I think the night it happened, I said this to people that I was texting during the event, that I'm pretty sure that Sherrard Blackledge, who won 30-27 all around the board, did not get the contract, because if I remember correctly, he had Cameron Church hurt many times and had a chance to finish it many times, and he just kind of choked on those opportunities. No, he didn't get caught or anything. He just kind of either waited too long or got too sloppy, and then, he'd miss a couple shots, and by the time he really started to hit, Cameron Church was back in it. So I think that kind of swayed Dana's decision a little bit. And even not arguably, obviously all 3 rounds went to Sherrard Blackledge, but one of the rounds was a lot more competitive than the rest of them, and it was weird that it was getting that way. I believe it was the last round too, so it was just more Sherrard Blackledge needs to be proven against somebody else, and obviously I believe Cameron Church got an invite back as well because of how he kind of held himself in the 3rd round, but yeah, Sherrard Blackledge went all 3 rounds with Cameron Church. It was a back and forth affair, very high pace grappling, but a lot of striking mostly. And it just it didn't end up getting Sherrard Blackledge the contract. But the next fight was a middleweight fight between 2 names that are kind of hard to pronounce, one harder than the other. Let's see if I can pronounce them because I have them written down here. The first one is Alias Kab Kizriev. Kizriev. And the other one is Henrique Shigemoto. Okay, that one's not that hard. But this was a middleweight fight, and it didn't even last a minute. It started off, both guys were kind of feeling each other out, prancing back and forth, trying to check each other's range. And then Kizriev went for a takedown that he really drove for. And then once he fucking got it, it was pretty much game over. They were scrambling for a bit. Kizriev took Shigemoto's back and locked in that rear naked quick. And then in under, I think it was 50 seconds was the finish. All I remember is it didn't last a minute, but I want to say around 50 seconds, maybe like 53 seconds, he finished Shigemoto by rear naked choke. It was fast. And then the next fight, so before I continue, the 4 finishes were 2 submissions, 2 knockouts, making it very balanced. And not only was it that balanced, but both submissions came after each other and both knockouts came after each other. So I just got to say, when I was watching this event and then looking at the results afterwards, my OCD was so happy. But anyway, we'll get into the next fight, which was a bantamweight bout between Draco Rodriguez and Mana Martinez. And this one was a fun fight. It also didn't last long. It was under 3 minutes long, but it was like a back and forth affair. It was a lot of striking. They were both trying to knock each other out on the feet. And then that's when Mana Martinez started to use his wrestling, and just as he's taking Draco Rodriguez down, he's like trying to slam Draco Rodriguez or something. Draco Rodriguez just locks in this triangle and then just holds on to this triangle so tight. And like Mana Martinez really tried to fight this triangle choke. I remember watching this live and I thought he was out of it. I didn't think it was as tight as it was, but obviously it's a blood choke. You can't just assume that one is not tight. It's as long as it's cutting off the carotid artery, right? But I remember watching this and I was like, it wasn't that tight. It's not that tight. And then the ref goes to check Mana Martinez's arm as soon as he goes to sleep. And yeah, he just couldn't tap. He fought that submission until he went out. And then the best part was the interview afterwards, because after the fight, they get a chance to go, well, not face to face, but like they go on the mic and then they talk to either Michael Bisping or Brendan Fitzgerald, whoever's kind of, commentating that night. And he said the funniest shit ever. He's like, I don't even know how I fucking did that. He's like, I can't believe I fucking did that. Because I think it was Bisping who was there that night. He asked, he's like, have you been training that? He's like, no, I didn't even know I could fucking do that. Where did that come from? He didn't even know he did it until it happened. He watched the replays like, I didn't even know I did it like that. It was the funniest shit ever. But that was the second finish of the night. And probably not my favorite finish of the night, because I think my favorite finish of the night is coming up. But it was just funny as fuck. Draco Rodriguez's little interview there, just how like baffled he was with how he's like, I can't believe I actually got that. Like, oh, it was so funny. But the next fight was the co-main event of this tiny little card, which was a light heavyweight bout between Tafon Nchukwi. or something like that. Some African ass name. I can't pronounce it. I'm trying to Tafon Nchukwi, I think is the name, and Al Mataval. And this was a fun fight. Again, two big guys going back and forth. They're striking, going back and forth. I believe there was a little bit of wrestling, if I remember correctly, but it was mostly just a lot of striking. And Chuckwy landing a lot of kicks, a lot of head kicks mostly, but a lot of kicks. And they were starting to add up. But Mataval was kind of holding his own. Like, it was arguably like Mataval won the first round, but halfway through the second round, they were striking, and if I remember correctly, it was as Mataval's kind of backing away from the engagement because they kind of clinched, and as he's backing away, Nchukwi lands a head kick and just knocks him stiff out cold. He hit the ground hard. Like he hit the ground hard and was out cold for a good like few minutes. They zoomed in on Nchukwi's face when the knockout happened, like when they were waiting for the decision. They just went with the decision because Mataval still wasn't up and conscious yet. It took them, I think I counted like 2 minutes of them just kind of zoomed in on all of Nchukwi's reactions to Mataval and saying, I'm sorry, dude, I'm sorry. And he was even apologizing to the ref, and the ref sitting there like, you don't got anything to apologize for. You did awesome. So a lot of respect there, but it was a scary knockout, awesome knockout, which is why it was my favorite on the card. But it was a scary knockout with how Mataval went out and didn't quite come conscious until probably I want to say like 30 seconds later. And then he probably wasn't even fully good until probably a good 2 minutes after, 3 minutes after. Because, after, if anybody's ever been knocked out or fainted, obviously being knocked out is a bit more different than fainted because you're getting fucking punched in the head. And it's that sudden shock wave, that sudden impact of your head going back where all the oxygen to the brain's being cut off for that split second, right? But they're kind of one and the same when you come to. The only difference is when you're knocked out and you wake up, your head kind of hurts. your head kind of hurts and you're groggy. When you wake up from being fainted, you just feel groggy. But I've had both happen to me, and I can say that both times when you're coming to, you just don't know what the fuck happens, and it takes you like a good minute or so to kind of fully come to. Like, you still feel kind of groggy, like weird. You could probably stand up at that point, but like you're still weird. Your balance is still not 100%. Like, it's fucked. And that's just kind of how Mataval was. It was a brutal knockout, but hats off to Tafon and Chuckwy. And he was one of the many contract winners. But going into the last fight was Philip Hawes and another name I cannot pronounce, but I'm going to try my darndest. Kadzimirat Bestayev or Beastayev, Bestayev. I'm just gonna go with Bestayev. These two were, I don't know, they were expected to finish each other. This was a fight that, like, no matter how many times it was shown on the broadcast, they were hailing this as the fight that was not going to go to the judges at all. No matter what way it went, this was not going to the judges at all. And it did not. Philip Hawes came in strong, aggressive, but so did Bestayev. Bestayev came in strong with his kickboxing and wrestling, tried to get those takedowns, but Philip Hawes did really great to back up against the cage and defend against those takedowns. And like I said, Philip Hawes came out strong and was hitting Bestayev with some heavy shots and ended up finishing Bestayev in under 2 minutes, like a minute and 20 seconds into the first round by TKO. And ended up scoring himself a contract. So when all was said and done, they started giving off the contracts, and obviously the winners, the ones that got the finishes, were the winners. We had Kizriev get the first contract, Draco Rodriguez get the second, and Chuckwy get the third, and then Philip Hawes getting the last one. And obviously Dana fucked with Sherrard Blackledge, but just kind of told Sherrod Blackledge that he is able to come back in November, and also said that Cameron Church can come back in November, but definitely Sherrod Blackledge. Kind of it was kind of similar to the I believe the Tucker Lutz and Chase Gibson one when and the Melsick one last week that I talked about. Those two fights, both fighters were allowed to come back. They were invited back, I guess. So, you know, but like I said, it was different last week. We had one guy, Ronnie Lawrence, who went to the decision, but was against an incredibly much taller opponent and just completely nullified String Bean and made him his bitch. So that's the reason why he got the contract. But yeah, this week the guys who got the decision did not get the contract, but they did get the invites. So that's exciting. But next week is going to be pretty interesting. Not in the main event, but one of the fights on the card, we're going to be having female boxer Danielle Wolff trying to make her, I don't know if she's already had an MMA debut, but she's definitely going to try to make her way into the UFC. Obviously there's no lightweight division or middleweight division for taller women, so she'll have to do featherweight, but I think she'll do just fine, but we'll see how she can handle MMA. But yeah, that'll be next week on next week's podcast. I'll be talking about that. And a little bit of an announcement. We're going to be having UFC vet Leo Kuntz on the podcast on the UFC 253 one the day after. I'll be interviewing him, asking him a couple questions, and we'll be talking about his career in the UFC and at Road FC and everything. And then I'll be getting into the fights by myself and, review them because obviously I'll be catching that card. It's a huge card. So we'll be doing that next week. So I just wanted to point that out real quick before I go on to the very last topic real fast. So anybody who loves UFC 4 like I do and wants to and likes esports or anything like that, this is more for my gamer nerds out there, my nerdy guys that like games. There is an actual fight league. If you want to watch actual fight cards on Twitch, the ESFL is a thing. It is a fight promotion for UFC 4 players where the best UFC 4 players in the world go head to head against each other. And there's championships, tournaments. They have like several cards during the week, whether they've got Proving Grounds or the promotion that I'm actually a part of, IXC, which is the International Xbox Championships. They've got Primetime MMA, UFL, and stuff like that on the channel. And they have at least 3-4 streams a week of these events. So, definitely go check out the ESFL gaming Twitch if you want to check those out. They've got Grand Prix going on right now. They just finished up their Xbox one yesterday. I caught that one. It was fucking awesome. Congrats to Dabakin, by the way, for the big title W in the main event for that. But next week, I believe, will be the PlayStation 4 Grand Prix. So there'll be that. They'll be crowning their PS4 champion for the UFC 4 season. Obviously, people will be able to fight for that title, but I just thought, I didn't even know this was a thing that existed until recently. I knew it was a thing, like people would get together and get people to do fight cards. They get UFC YouTubers to get together and do fight cards, but I never knew this was an actual league, and it ends up being an actual league with many little promotions that lead up to this ESFL league, which, like I said, I'm in one of them. So definitely go check out the ESFL gaming Twitch, and definitely look out for whenever I end up fighting on an IXC card or something like that. I probably will end up getting my ass kicked, but look out for that, and I'll end up sharing that on my Twitch or on my definitely on my Twitter, maybe on my Instagram, stuff like that. So I'll end up doing that. But not only is it neat that you get little fight cards with the best UFC players out there, but the communities, all the communities in each of the promotions are just so nice. The one that I'm a part of, IXC, has one of the best communities, smaller, but very together despite everyone being competitors against each other. Very nice people. ESFL has a larger base, but still very nice people. They all troll each other, but they're all good buddies. It's a nice community to make yourself feel welcome. So if you play UFC 4 and you're looking to test your skills against some of the best and you don't want to do ranked with all those little bitches that spam clinch and everything, then definitely go and check out ESFL or any of their affiliate leagues, because they have rules against spamming, and it's just a completely different experience, and the community is just awesome. But yeah, I guess that's it for my little ESFL thing. I wasn't supposed to talk about that, but I ended up talking about it because I just really wanted to mention it. I thought it was really cool that even though we have esports leagues for like Street Fighter, Smash, Call of Duty, CS:GO, all that, that UFC 4 has an or like an esports league, but it's different. As the other leagues go by like an actual sports league format where they have, oh, okay, well, we have these certain events where they play a certain amount of games and then their wins count for their win record. Instead of that, we have fight cards. We're treating it like actual MMA. But obviously, when one guy fights, like the champion fights in the main event, he's not going to have to wait a month or two to fight again. He can just do it the next week, the next card, if he really wants to defend his title on the next card, right? So I just thought that was really neat. Thought I'd mention that if anybody wants a little bit of a difference from the esports scene. It's definitely a different experience instead of a tournament format or, an NHL or, regular sports league format. It's an actual MMA format and I like it. So anyway, go check that out. And without further ado, we'll get into the second half of our podcast. So let's talk about this weekend's UFC event and the main event that a lot of people actually slept on. All right, so let's talk about this week's UFC event. So before I start, we're not only going to talk about this week's UFC event, but I'm just going to talk quickly about Bellator's event that they had. So they had two events, actually. They had two back-to-back events. They had Bellator 245 and 246 the next day. But I'm going to be talking about the 246 because I don't believe 245 was a title fight. But 246, we had Juan Archuleta. I believe he was the former bantamweight champion, and he went up to featherweight to chase the featherweight title, and he lost. So he came back down to get the bantamweight title against Patrick Mix, who is a very, very tall individual, an incredibly skilled fighter, a very well-known Bellator fighter. And what can I say other than Juan Archuleta just showed exactly why he was the bantamweight champ years ago before I think Darian Caldwell or whatever his name is took it over. His wrestling was incredible. He practically nullified the fact that Patchy was long and tall and lanky, and he did essentially what Ronnie Lawrence did last week when I was talking about his performance on Contender Series. Utilized his striking smartly by closing the distance perfectly and using that clinch. Used his wrestling perfectly and ended up edging out the decision, I believe, and ended up getting the Bellator championship title. And just wanted to quickly talk about that because I love Bellator. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to catch it last night. I wasn't able to catch it Friday night because of the Raptors game. And last night, I was only able to catch the main event because it just so happened that the UFC event, Waterson versus Hill, ended just before the main event would have started on Bellator 246. So I was lucky there. But I just wanted to talk about that because I love Bellator. They always put on some cracking fights. They get a lot of hate because they take a lot of UFC's old guys, I guess, and it's like UFC's retirement home is the joke, I guess. But yeah, no, I love the shit that they do there. I believe 245's fight was actually Leota Machida versus Phil Davis, so that was a great fight too. We have obviously Leota Machida, who's just an incredible kicker, like fucking kills everyone with his kicks. So I don't know, we'll see. But I just want to talk about that because I don't talk about Bellator too much on the podcast, but that's because Bellator has been doing their events really weird. They'll do like 2 events a month, and when those 2 events happen, they're either one event each week, and it's only for like 2 weeks a month, or it's back to back for that 1 week, and then there's not an event until like the next month or something like that. So that's usually why I don't end up talking about them, because by the time I talk about them on the podcast, it's either too late that it's already happened, or I just completely forgot because another event happened. So I end up talking about that event instead. Anyway, just wanted to talk about that. We'll get into this UFC fight card now. So before I begin, this was completely different than last week's fight card. We actually had just as many pretty much fights than the last card had. So remember, last week's card had 7 fights on it. Well, that was the entire card. Just the main card of this fight card alone has 6 fights. The prelims have like, I want to say 6 more, maybe 5 more. So we had a long card tonight or last night, and it was really fun. But we're going to talk about the main card. And the main card started off with a bang. We had Canadian Kyle Nelson, who I was actually rooting for because I'm Canadian, against Billy Quarantillo, who I believe was making his return since like 2019, 2018. Either way, I was really expecting Kyle Nelson to come into this and win easily. He's on a like 2 or 3 fight tear where all pretty much all of his finishes are first to second round knockouts, where he just comes out aggressively and finishes them. And he did not change that here. He came into the Billy Quarantillo fight just aggressive as all hell and really gave Billy Quarantillo a hard time in the first round. But it was clear that aggressiveness, and Billy Quarantillo trained for that aggressiveness. So it was clear that he was able to handle it. So after the first round, which I believe he had Billy Quarantillo in trouble a couple times during the first round, it started to be clear that going into the second round, Kyle Nelson was starting to slow down. And that was when Billy Quarantillo really started to pick up his game. The second round, it was just Billy Quarantillo using his clinch, putting him against the cage, and just constantly piecing Kyle Nelson up with his striking, especially in the head area. And that those head strikes really added up. His jaw really started to absorb those head strikes to the point where he got hurt. Kyle Nelson got hurt at the end of the second round, and it could have arguably been stopped there. So going into the third round, everybody knows Kyle Nelson's really hurt. How is he going to handle this? You know, whenever a fighter's really hurt at the end of the round, they go into the next round either just starting to recover or they're hurt still. Well, we got our answer 7 seconds into the third round because Billy Quarantillo knocked out Kyle Nelson in 7 seconds. He threw a left jab at Kyle Nelson, which kind of missed, kind of just skid Kyle Nelson, not even, and caused Kyle Nelson to drop his hands onto the left side of Kyle Nelson's head, which opened up the right hook for Billy Quarantillo, which landed flush on the jaw, made Kyle Nelson face plant on the fucking canvas, face first, and it was so bad. He didn't, just before I continue, Billy Quarantillo did not hit any follow-up strikes. It was a walk-away KO. But anyway, Kyle Nelson rolls over with his face covered like he doesn't know what the fuck is going on. That's how bad this punch was. But I just got to say, it was a great showing by Billy Quarantillo. He withstood the initial onslaught, let Kyle Nelson tire himself out, and then just took advantage of that and really showed his skill with his striking, pieced up Kyle Nelson, and clearly had him hurt and just kept countering. Kyle Nelson came forward and he countered Kyle Nelson's punch, threw that left jab, had Kyle Nelson blocking it to the right side of his head, which dropped the hands for the left side, which opened up that hook, and it was perfect setup. So I don't know, man. It was just a great showing by Billy Quarantillo, and this is definitely one of those guys that I'm actually going to be excited to see. Like, I'm going to be very excited to see coming, going into the future. If he ends up taking another fight, in the next couple of weeks, I'd love to see him fight somebody else. But yeah, that's going to be fun. Anyway, we're going to move on to the next fight, which was another pretty much guaranteed fireworks, or at least on one side of the things, which was King Bobby Green, making his return since Lando Venata's scrap with him. I believe last month, was it? I think it was last month, maybe the end of June, maybe the end of July. I don't know. But so this is the first time he's returning since then. And this fight, I'm going to say, wasn't really anything of note. Bobby Green put on an incredible display of skill and rightfully earned the decision. And I was going to talk about this fight, but like I said, it was a typical Bobby Green performance where he utilized his kickboxing, but mostly his wrestling, and he did a really good job doing that. I want to talk about, though, is yet again Bobby Green's post-fight interview. So Bobby Green, I don't know if it's been recently or if he's always done this, but to me, because I've noticed it recently, Bobby Green has been going into those post-fight interviews where they go into the back and they get the headset and they talk to the commentators instead of the commentators going in. Um, they, they answer questions. And last time when he beat Lando Venata, they were trying to get him to admire his handiwork. And I believe this was just probably like a month after the George Floyd protests really started and really blew up. And Bobby Green, for those who don't know, is adopted. He was adopted by a white family. And his dad, his stepdad, or not a stepdad, his adopted father, his adopted dad, just so happens to be one of his coaches that was there that night. So to make a statement, Bobby Green brought his dad in and just started to essentially make a statement saying we shouldn't be looking at people for race or color. We should just look at them for characters, heart, personality, the real things that make a person, not their color. Like, yeah, I'm white. You're black. That's just the color of your skin. What really makes a person is how they act towards things, the type of person they are, personality, heart, morals, that type of thing. And he made that statement, and it was an incredible statement. And this time, again, he did not waste a single second to make another statement. This time, it was about Afkari's execution. The Iranian wrestler I talked about in the first half of the podcast. He actually brought that up. Michael Bisping tried to get him to, admire his handiwork. And pretty much Bobby Green said, no, I can't even do the interview right now. I just found out about this Iranian wrestler who got pretty much framed and executed for a murder he didn't commit. And it's just messed me up, man. I don't think I want to talk about anything right now. And honestly, that's awesome. That Bobby Green is really just kind of breaking the mold for most post-fight interviews. Most post-fight interviews are like, I'd like to thank Mom and God and Dad and my grandmama that's in heaven right now. This one's for my ma who died. It's usually like that. Bobby Green's putting on a statement, and he's not even doing the whole pompous like, I'm better than you because I'm not racist type thing. It's just like it's more of like a Rodney King type of, why can't we all just get along? Like, why can't we all get along, please, type of thing. And I love it. And I love that Bobby Green keeps taking these opportunities to do that. So my hat goes off, even though I'm not wearing one right now as recording this, but my hat goes off to Bobby Green for that, because he just does not waste a single second in those interviews to take the time to actually make a statement about these important issues that need to be brought up, right? So honestly, hats off to him. And I hope I get to see more of Bobby Green in the octagon soon, and a lot more of those interviews. Hopefully they get a lot more recognition as well on social media. But that's that for the lightweight bout. Like I said, there wasn't really much to talk about for the actual bout itself, but more the post-fight interview and just how Bobby Green's been lately, and I like that. So, yeah, just wanted to talk about that. We'll get into the next fight, though, which was a light heavyweight bout between Ed Short Fuse Herman and Mike Rodriguez. And this one actually was marred in controversy. And I do not blame them one bit. So, from start to finish, it was a good fight. Ed Herman held his own for a tiny bit in the first round, but Mike Rodriguez was getting better of the striking exchanges. He's clearly the better striker. In the second round, Ed Herman nearly got TKO'd 3 fucking separate times. There was 3 separate times that the ref probably should have stopped the fight, but, kind of did that whole I'm giving him a chance to be a warrior mentality. And he survived all 3 fucking chances. So that being said, we're going into the third round now. And Ed Herman's hurt. He's getting his fucking ass kicked this whole fight. Like I said, he held his own in the first round, but cleared Mike Rodriguez's round because it was a striking affair, and he did a great job, nullified the takedowns and everything. Same thing with the second round, including the fact that, like I said, Mike Rodriguez nearly TKO'd him 3 separate times in just that one round. But going into the third, so Obviously, Ed Herman's down 2-0. He's getting his fucking ass pushed in by like a bigger, much more manly inmate. I'm kidding, obviously, but he's getting his shit pushed in. And my God, if this isn't the dirtiest fucking thing I have ever seen. So they're in the middle of an exchange. I believe Mike Rodriguez went in for an inside leg kick, and it clearly hit the thigh. But for some fucking reason, like if you look at the replay, it clearly hit the thigh. But for some fucking reason, the ref saw it as a low blow. And here's Ed Herman claiming it was a low blow, saying, "Oh yeah, it was a low blow, it was a low blow. I got low blowed, yep, yep." So he takes this 5 minutes to no, I don't think he took the full 5 minutes, but he took the, the typical 5 minutes that you take to, get your breather, to make sure your balls are, stop hurting, at least to the point where you can fight again. And he used that to his advantage after faking this nut shot. Literally, like he played it off as if he was a footballer, like a soccer player. So after he was done and he was given that little break, he comes out and fucking submits Mike Rodriguez. Now, the reason why this was marred in controversy was because of the low blow. I don't like that. I don't like the way that Ed Herman won. It's the cheesiest way to win a fight ever. It's like those types of dudes that, fake the glove touch and then they manage to get like the first round knockout because they fucking fake the glove touch. It's the same thing as that. You took the trust system of the ref and fucking just kind of thumped it on its head. So, I mean, as much as I hate the fact that Ed Herman won on that, it was a fucking smart, cheesy ass move. I'll give him that. But my heart feels for Mike Rodriguez because he was like, I think it happened almost 3 minutes into the fucking third round. So like leading up to that submission, Mike Rodriguez was pretty much 2 minutes away from winning. Easy as fuck decision against Ed Herman. And then Ed Herman just bitched his way out of it and managed to get the submission. So goddamn, just that was probably one of the more wackier things that happened on the card. The only other thing that I could remember was, I can't remember which prelim fight it happened on, but earlier on this card, I think it was a prelim fight. One guy knocked his opponent down and just started walking around like it was a walk-off KO, but the ref didn't put an end to the fight. So he just knocked him down and then started walking away like it was nothing. Like, like I just knocked him out. Well, Buddy's sitting there with his hands behind his head like, are you going to come down to the ground with me or am I going to get stood up? Like it was just fucking funny. But yeah, that was the weirdest shit that happened on this card, was Ed Herman's little finish there. But my hats go off to him because it was a cheap finish and he did good there. The next fight was a women's flyweight bout against my favorite women's flyweight fight ever, Roxanne Modafferi, also known as Roxy the Happy Warrior. She is probably one of the most wholesome and greatest mixed martial artists in this goddamn sport right now. She's not very well known, but she is the most geeky and most down-to-earth personality that you'll ever see. It's like an Israel Adesanya, but not as fucking cringe. It's like she doesn't take anime to a whole new level. She just kind of references it here and there. It's not like Izzy, where Izzy would probably show up dressed as fucking Kakashi from Naruto or some shit like that. So it's not as cringy as Izzy's bullshit with anime. So, she's actually enjoyable to watch. But anyway, Roxy put on an incredible performance against Andrea Lee. She showcased her striking greatly. But the biggest highlight of this fight was Roxy's ground game. Every time it was about pretty much 3 takedowns apiece for them both, 3 or 4 takedowns apiece at the end of it. But every time Andrea Lee would bring down Roxy to the ground, Roxy would reverse it and end up on her back or end up in top guard, one of those things. And every time that Roxy would take Andrea down, it was more or less the more dominant of the few exchanges, but it was very equal on the feet. There was Roxy with her flurries, Andrea with her heavy hits. I think she even had Andrea Lee's like eye cut open at some point, and her nose was busted open. So it was a very close fight. I believe it was a split decision or unanimous decision that was really close. But yeah, no, it was a great fight, and Roxy won a very well-deserved decision, man. It was an awesome fight between those two. That's all I can really say. It was a great fast-paced fight of striking and high-level grappling. They weren't, for the most part, holding each other in one spot and stalling. They were trying to grapple to different exchanges. The only time they would stall is if they were both in a stalemate where, like, Roxy had Andrea Lee's legs tied up and Andrea had Roxy's head stuck. And so Roxy couldn't move her hips because if she rolled or she scrambled a certain way, her neck would get deep into a submission. And Andrea couldn't fucking move at all because Roxy had her leg tied up, so she couldn't really move left or right because Roxy's little leg tie there is controlling the hips and everything. And it was just one of those fights where it was one of those fights that an actual MMA fan would enjoy. Someone who enjoys all aspects of the game would enjoy watching this fight. But it was one of those types of fights where that's not the excuse to just justify why you enjoyed watching it. That's literally what it was a fun display of something that every MMA fan loves. And it's just an all-around balanced game. And I love that. And it was a great display of that. And that leads us into our co-main event, which I think Roxy and Andrea Lee should have been the co-main event. But instead we had undefeated Otman Azaitar versus Kama Worthy. And I thought Kama Worthy was going to win. And I was sorely disappointed because this didn't even go 2 minutes. Kama Worthy and Otman came out swinging, and they did really good. They were holding each other on for a little bit. I think Kama Worthy hit Otman with a couple of hard shots. But then against the cage, Otman kind of hurt Kama Worthy a little bit and started backing him up fully against the cage. And then that's just when the flurry started to unleash. Just out of nowhere, Otman Azaitar just comes out with this crazy flurry that just every punch was brutal. And it was clear Kama Worthy couldn't do fuck all for it. Like, he was just pretty much hunched up against the cage, just hoping to God that he was going to gas himself out. It was one of those things. Like, it was clear where one of the shots even had Kama Worthy's legs buckling against the cage. And that's why he was just covering up, not defending himself properly. His legs were buckling. The ref had to step in. And Kama Worthy got really mad about it, started arguing about the decision. And it was funny because it was so clear that Kama Worthy was out, or at least extremely hurt. He was not coming back from that. Unless Otman has the hands down the worst fucking cardio in the world, he was not going to gas out, or he was not going to survive that until Otman gasses out. There's no way. He was taking too many unanswered shots, even as he was covered up. The shots were making him buckle. He had no proper answer for it. He wasn't defending himself properly. He literally wasn't moving his head. He wasn't moving his hips. He wasn't swaying. He was literally just stuck with his head on the center line and his hands to his face or to the side of his head trying to block the shots. He couldn't do anything. It was clear he was hurt, and it was a good stoppage by the ref. So that brings us into the main event. And this was the fight that many people were sleeping on, even though people such as myself were expecting fireworks because it's Angela Hill. A lot of people were sleeping on this event because it's like, oh, it's a women's MMA main event. It's not that good. Well, here's my piss break, or here's my smoke break, or whatever you want to fucking say. But anyone who slept on this event or decided to miss this event because it didn't look good on paper or the main event marquee didn't look good, you're an idiot. And you missed out on an incredible fight. Obviously not a fight of the year contender or anything. That still goes to Joanna and Wei Li. But my God, these two brought the fireworks. Michelle Waterson she was forced to use her karate. Because as everybody knows, she's good at karate, but she likes to use her grappling more than anything. She is, well, now, after last night's fight, is a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but she was like a purple belt 4th stripe or something like that. One of the highest levels of purple belt you could be. and she just really loves her grappling. But Angie just would always successfully, every time that, I think only one takedown worked, but every time that Michelle Waterson would try to go for a takedown, Angie would just successfully defend the takedown, push her against the fence, and not only back up against the fence with her, but reverse her against the fence as she's trying to take her down. So Angie has the dominant position against the cage, and it was just more or less a lot of the same thing. It was just them clinching against the cage, popping each other with strikes. Waterson hitting her with a couple of counter punches while Angie's hitting her with her flurries and her heavy shots. And she had Waterson hurt a couple times, even busted Waterson's nose completely broken. And it was just one of those fights where Waterson was completely hurt. She was busted up. Angie was just giving it her all. Both girls were tired, but it was still so fast-paced, so high level, constant back and forth. There was no stalls. Like, it was just constant action. And it was, I have to say, two biggest examples of why I enjoy watching women's mixed martial arts over the guys sometimes. You got to watch Joanna versus Wei Li, and you got to watch this fight, because it'll pretty much just kind of show to you why I love watching these fights. When it's a back and forth fight where they're putting it all on the ground or all on the fucking line, and at the end of the fight, they're showing each other respect, and you're sitting there biting your fucking nails pretty much because you don't know which way the decision's going to go. That's the shit that I like. That's the shit that I enjoy. So, easy to say, if you decided that you were going to miss out on last night's fights, or especially the main event, because the main event didn't look good, you missed out on an absolutely amazing fight for a fight night. It was awesome. A great fight. But anyway, I've been ranting for long enough. Sounds like my Discord's going crazy despite me fucking muting it. I don't know why it still does that. So whoever's adding me on Discord, making my notifications override, go fuck yourself. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next episode. I'm really excited for that UFC 253 episode, by the way, guys. I cannot wait to have Leo Kuntz on the podcast. It's going to be really awesome to get to interview him. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to my annoying ass talk about everything mixed martial arts this week. And I will see you guys in next week's episode. Peace out, guys.
You've been listening to the Dillo's Dojo podcast. Keep in touch with Dillo on his social media at Dillo Ross on Twitter and Dillo Ross on Instagram.